US President Donald Trump has just announced 25% tariffs for India starting the 1st of August. Taking to Truth Social, US President Donald Trump has in fact put out a large tweet, a huge tweet. He goes on to say, and I'll quote, "Remember, while India is our friend, we have over the years done relatively little business with them because their tariffs are far too high, among the highest in the world, and they have the most strenuous and obnoxious non-monetary trade barriers of any country." He also goes on to say they have always bought a vast majority of their military equipment from Russia and are Russia's largest buyer of energy. Along with China, at a time when everyone wants Russia to stop the killing in Ukraine, all things are not good. India will therefore be paying a tariff of 25% plus a penalty for the above, starting on the 1st of August. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. Signing off, Donald Trump. Dr. Sharath Kohli, senior economist, with me on the broadcast to talk about this. Dr. Kohli, Donald Trump and his tariffs are back again, and this time the reason is that we are buying oil from Russia, so the tariff is 25% plus a penalty. What is your first reaction to this, Dr. Kohli? This is huge.
Well, my first reaction, Vineet, good evening, first of all, is that I totally condemn this move by US, and I don't think this is acceptable at any time. I mean, all the statements that he has given are not acceptable. First of all, he said we have done little business with India. Well, I think he's forgotten that $86 billion is the export we are doing. More than $45 billion is the import we are doing from the US. So how can he say that, you know, we have done hardly any business, first of all? And my second point, Vineet, is the structure of our economy is very different from the structure of the US economy. And every country has got the right to design its import and export policy according to the structure. We are primarily an agri-driven economy. He wanted an open market for agri and dairy. And for God's sake, we cannot agree to agri and dairy. What will happen to our crores and crores of farmers and dairy producers in India? And the third point he's made is that because we are dealing with Russia, now every country has got a sovereign right to trade the way it wants. If we are getting cheaper oil from Russia during COVID and after COVID too, what is the harm? Every country has got the right to save money. And import and export, I have said that earlier on your channel and your show as well, that import and export is a natural evolution of demand and supply. It's a natural evolution of which country is strong, which country is not strong, in which products. So I fail to understand that how can a country impose restrictions, impose tariffs, just because there is a trade deficit we have the US. I completely condemn this, and I hope these secondary tariffs do not come into effect. I'm sure the rest of the world is also going to realize, because President Trump is being very, very arbitrary in levying tariff on countries, and he's forgotten the fact
Dr. Kohli, do you think Donald Trump has thought through this announcement? It seems more like that he's agitated about the fact that we are buying weapons and energy from Russia. It has nothing to do with the dynamics of the trade between these two large countries.
Vineet, I would say it's got both. Well, of course, his agitation, his irritation of our dealing with Russia is of course there. But he's basically irritated with the rest of the world that why is there a trade deficit with US has? Well, I think he's forgotten the fact that US cannot manufacture everything within its own land. He's completely forgotten that. So I condemn this, and I hope this penalty which he's speaking about, because he's spoken about 500% tariffs on the countries which are dealing with Russia and using their energy. And we are almost buying 1/3 of our requirements from Russia at this point of time. So imagine if 500% comes, it will be an unrealistic, basically. Basically, in other words, you are trying to say that we don't want to import anything. But I think what he's forgetting in this entire episode is that he's going to fuel inflation. Tonight a decision on Fed rates would be made by Jerome Powell. And he had met Jerome Powell a few days ago. And I am almost sure that Jerome Powell is not going to cut down the rates simply because there is fear of inflation looming large over the US, basically because of the tariff policy. So I condemn this, and I'm sure US will have to pay price for this arbitrary policy which it is launching. The deal with China is still stuck. And one of the reasons I spoke on your sister channel today morning, which is Newsx World, where I said one of the main reasons why US-China deal is stuck is because of the structure of the economy. It's the same problem here.
Dr. Kohli, Dr. Kohli, there were a lot of murmurs in the echelons of trade and monetary policy and economy as well that we are going to be striking an FTA with the Americans. What becomes of that?
In this scenario, I think FTA is a foregone conclusion. If these tariffs are levied, I don't think FTA talks. We've had several rounds of talks. So many times Indians went there, our representatives from Commerce Ministry. So many times they have come here. Is this what all the deliberation was for? If you had to levy 25% tariff, then what was the point of discussing so much? What US wants is free entry of its goods at 0%, the way it has done with Indonesia, the way it has done with EU, the way it has done with UK. It wants to sell its goods free of, which is free of tariff, and it wants to levy tariffs. I think this double standard policy will not survive for long. Knowing President Trump, I'm sure he's going to backtrack. This will have to be revisited. This will have to be rethought, and this cannot be pushed through. I think Indian diplomacy, Indian commerce circle, Indian government is definitely not going to accept this, because we are fine with dealing rest of the world. US is not the end of the world for us, Vineet.
Dr. Kohli, how does this harm American interests as well? That is obviously a point or a pivot that Donald Trump is not looking into.
Well, I think we export textiles, we export pharmaceuticals, we export leather goods, we export gems and jewelry. And unless President Trump wants, if he's got alternate market, fine, but not every country can supply what other countries are supplying, which in fact means, to answer your question directly, which in fact means that President Trump will now have to import. Well, I think there's one thing people need to understand about tariffs is that when you have tariffs, you are basically levying it on the goods which are landing in America. So effectively, you are collecting revenue on that, but it is at the end of the day, the consumers are going to pay the price. I think he's completely out of context with that the American public are going to suffer from inflation. The goods are going to be expensive. Either you do not import or you import at an expensive price. So I think this is the sooner he learns that, the better it would be. For now, I think it's a very poor economic policy which he's trying to implement across the world. It's been more than 3 months now, and the world is basically in a turmoil. I have a feeling, Vineet, that he's going to backtrack. He will have to revisit this.
In fact, Donald Trump starts his statement on Truth Social by saying that India is our friend. But this is not how you deal with friends. Donald Trump has also been extremely vocal when it comes to Apple products not being manufactured in India. A big fillip and a boost to our economy.
Absolutely. I think when he says you start manufacturing Apple phones in America, little does he know that the $1,200 Apple phone or a $1,500 Apple phone is going to be for $3,500. So unless he wants, he can set up factories in America. He wants factories to be set up in America overnight. He's forgotten that America, many decades ago, has moved away from the era of being a manufacturing hub. And he's also forgotten that the world doesn't forget America. When we use Meta, when we use Google, when we buy burgers from McDonald's, when we drink Coca-Colas and Pepsis, we always, I can hardly imagine a person from anywhere in the world not using an American product either digitally or in a brick and mortar model, not remembering America. So I'm surprised as to how he's forgotten that the world is being unfair with America. In the process of making MAGA, Make America Great Again, I can bet you, Vineet, he's going to make America expensive again. So my MAGA would be MAEA going forward.
All right. Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, also joins us on the program. Professor Nalapat, while Donald Trump has called us a friend first, and then he's imposed 25% tariffs on India, and the reasons which have been highlighted in that particular post are to the tune that India is buying energy and weapons from Russia. So what's your overall assessment of this rather not thought out move by Donald Trump?
I'd like to say, Vineet, that I think the US defense industry is very upset that so many orders are going elsewhere. They're going to France, they're going to Russia, and the problem is they're very high priced. And another problem is that there are multiple limitations sometimes. So you buy something from the US, then some sanctions come, primary, secondary, the companies have to obey that. So we have, for example, our Air Force has been waiting for an aircraft for a long time. But the reality, the US supplier so far has not delivered. So that is a problem. I'd like to say that President Trump should be given the highest medal by both Russia and China. The highest civilian honor should be given to him for a simple reason. After basically creating a storm in US in EU ties, and remember, transatlantic alliance, even though it's not the age of the Atlantic, is still very important. And European Union countries are not amused. They're not very happy, to put it mildly, at the way Trump more or less forced a trade deal on them. He's trying to use this tactic to force India to open up its agricultural sector to surplus food from the US. The fact is, US farmers have got a surplus. But the point is, Indian agriculture is too precious. If we have any problem with Indian agriculture, any interference with our with seeds, for example, including use of genetically modified seeds, well, then we'll have a serious problem with 1.4 billion people to feed. And Donald Trump is not really going to worry if those people die of starvation. So, but obviously the Prime Minister is worried. So my point is very simple. I mean, if Donald Trump wants to make an enemy out of India, well, let him do so. But I can tell you there are some issues on which India will not compromise. For example, it's pharma. You have excellent Indian pharma, uh, generic pharma, and they could lower the cost of healthcare in the United States significantly. But if Donald Trump imposes some kind of a tariff on them, well, who's going to pay? The American consumer is going to pay. Eventually, all these tariffs are going to hit back on the US and the US consumer. And Trump will definitely lose more and more support. I think, frankly, this is really, as you said, a very ill thought out move. And Trump acknowledges we are an important partner and then slaps us in the face. Is that what you do to an important partner? Do you shove somebody when you're supposed to be a good friend? I'm sorry, but in the opinion of many people in India, the US is not a reliable ally anymore so long as Trump is president. I'm not yet a Trump skeptic, but the reality is I've seen people in Europe, I've seen people in India who believe the US is not a reliable partner at all. And all Donald Trump is doing is to help them in that belief by giving them ample grounds for basically saying, look, we told you so. So frankly, this is a way of pressure tactics, but I don't think this government will bend to that kind of pressure. And if he wants to impose tariffs, so be it. Let him do so. And let him remember that when an Indo-Pacific situation comes, he is imposing tariffs on the one country, apart from Japan, which can be of immense help to the United States in the Indo-Pacific, in securing the Indo-Pacific. I think people need to, around him, need to give a reality check.
It was also sorry to interject, sir, but there were also talks about an FTA between the two countries. What happens to that?
Look, first of all, I'd like to say they would love to have an FTA, but the reality situation is it cannot include certain products like agriculture and farm products. The US farmer will simply dump agriculture products on India. Now, we have all seen what happens when China has dumped manufactured products on India, on the US, and so many countries. Their own manufacturing sector has been hollowed out at the expense of China. So we are not going to compromise on agriculture. We are not going to compromise on important items of concern to the US consumer, that is farmer. And in my view, I think a campaign needs to be launched by friends of India-US partnership, not of course by the Indian government. They should not be involved. About pointing out how harmful this step is for U.S. interests. So if you add the Epstein saga, you add all this together, frankly, it's a deadly cocktail. And I would request the people in the White House to consider, and before the deadline comes, to basically ensure that this kind of threat is withdrawn, because frankly, bullying and threats are not something that a self-respecting nation can take kindly to, and certainly not India under Prime Minister Modi. Thank you, Vinny.
Absolutely right, sir. Well articulated. Dr. Sergey Dvoryanov, President of IDC Russia and Director of WHD International Board, is joining us from Moscow at this point in time. Dr. Sergey, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Well, Donald Trump has made a huge announcement. India is going to have to pay 25% tariffs if we are to do business with the Americans. And what comes out of that post that he's put out, sir, on Truth Social, is more to do with Russia and India relationship than it has to do with Russia, with India and American relationship. What do you make of this erratic move that Donald Trump has just made?
See, first of all, the reality, we are right now in the deep conflict between East and West. It's not only conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It's actually a conflict between traditional world, which is belong to the eastern part of the planet, and the modern world, modern civilization, Western civilization, and main key country of this alliance, of course, America. Because America was opened like a project. It was like a new world after colonization from Europe. And right now we can see that Donald Trump try his level best because he is a peacemaker and he is a businessman. He is not a crude politician with some military ambitions. He tried his level best to negotiate peace, like he did in Iran, in Israel conflict, like he did in Pakistan and India conflict. But in this conflict, Russia, with the western part of the world, Europe, and other countries which support Ukraine and push Ukraine to destroy Russia. Unfortunately, Donald Trump was not successful. He failed with his ambitions and promisings, because he promised a lot that he will keep this, handle the situation, that he will bring peace between our countries. I think himself, he is right now on the big pressure of the Western politicians. But at the same time, we can see reality is a proxy war. It's not only war on the battlefield. It's war, information war, it's financial war, economical war, everything including. That's why right now the position and the condition of Donald Trump push him to make this, unfortunately, very bad decision. And he wants to involve India also, but you know very well that Russian-India relationships is very strong, because they based on the ethics, on dharma, they based on traditional values, they based on some our interest to support humanity. We are two countries which has a spiritual mission during our very old history. America, what is America? It's just a newborn civilization, nothing. They're very ambitious, but they're a child. That's why I can see that slowly, of course, because of the mercy of God, Donald Trump should be convinced that he should change this position and he should not bring this agenda and try to destroy our relationships between India and Russia as well. That is my opinion, like a religious philosopher.
In fact, let me also rope in Mithali Nakore into this conversation. Mithali, let's also not forget that, Dr. Sergey also said he promised a lot. And a number of those promises, Mithali, if you can hear me. Mithali, there seems to be some movement with your camera. If you can just stabilize that for me, please. Thank you very much. All right. Well, okay, to cut the long story short, Donald Trump's approval ratings, which came out about 24 hours ago, have been the lowest ever, down to 41% of the people that were in fact surveyed. Only 41% approved of his handling of the economy, which perhaps he's running into the ground. And secondly, the immigration crisis also has precipitated as a result of Donald Trump's mishandling or insensitive way of handling. What do these 25% tariff declarations mean for India? He's also criticized India. He's spoken about how India is opaque when it comes to matters that have to do with ease of doing business. All of this does not sound like the tone of a friend that India believes Donald Trump to be.
No, absolutely. And, this is absolutely a shocking development. I don't think that any of us as analysts, I have just spent about a month in the US. We've been interacting with, the State Department friends, and we've been interacting with the Indian High Commission also, and the Indian Embassy. I think it was fairly evident that while there might be some disagreements on specific sectors like agriculture, like dairy, but it was very clear that, overall, there was agreement on the two sides that it is sensible to work together. It is sensible for India and the US as two major democracies to continue to work together. So I think amongst the staff, there was a lot of bonhomie and understanding, on the trade agreement. So I think, this particular incident and this particular tweet or, post on Truth Social really comes out as quite surprising, quite a shock to a lot of the analysts, including myself. And, definitely this is not in the right direction. As our previous speaker, Dr. Sergey, just said, the relationship that India and Russia have is a very historical and strong relationship. And that relationship stands on one side. At the same time, India has always adopted a non aligned stance and said that we stand as a leader of the global south.
Seems that, it almost seems that he's agitated over the friendship that India and Russia share, and that's why this is a knee-jerk reaction. And India can also follow suit by condemning the Americans for showing a lot of latitude to Pakistan.
I mean, what is this entire announcement that was made of bitcoins being transferred to Pakistan just after, the recent skirmishes that happened, or the war that happened between India and Pakistan, and also constantly claiming credit for the India-Pakistan peace agreement and ceasefire, which was actually negotiated bilaterally and did not have any US involvement, as has been repeatedly reiterated by the Ministry of External Affairs and by the Department of Defense on both sides. So at the end of the day, India can also, of course, answer back, but we are not going to do that. We are going to always adopt a pragmatic approach, because while we realize that we have a very strong relationship with the BRICS economies, we also have a strong trading relationship with the Western economies. We've just had a massive trade deal with the UK, which has been extremely beneficial for our country and which has been negotiated in the most professional manner by the British delegation. And at the same time, we were expecting the same kind of negotiations with the US, which have clearly not materialized. And with this particular post, it becomes even harder to go back to that point.
Ambassador Kapoor, how do you weigh in on this announcement by Donald Trump? Let's not forget that UK, like the Americans, has also voiced concerns when it comes to India buying energy from Russia. But they still went ahead with the FTA. That is how diplomacy works. This is how pragmatism works. There could be differences. There could be a difference of opinion as well, but you need to treat each other with some respectability, considering the fact that both these countries, India and the United States, come from varied backgrounds. We've just achieved independence about 8 decades ago, roughly, and the Americans, have been enjoying independence for almost 300 years. So obviously there is a difference in the way India is going to conduct itself with the world.
Thank you, Vineet. I think this is basically a work in progress. It's diplomacy by tweets and by through Truth Social. So we should not think of it as a finalized position forever. We have to keep on working towards reducing the tariff levels, which will be mutually beneficial to both the sides. And his other arguments currently are just trying to justify this higher level of tariff for India. But what India has to understand is that America also needs access to the Indian market. We have the biggest population in the world. We have the biggest rural population in the world, which is an aspiring population, which is more, the rural population of India is more than the population of all the Western countries put together. So there are a lot of positives for America to have a better and more reasonable and more balanced trade agreement and tariff tiers with India. So it will happen over time, and we have to not be shy about our dealings with other countries, just as most countries in the world keep on dealing with the countries which are not, amicable or amenable to good international behavior of, sort of approach towards terrorism in consonance or in resonance with what India approaches them. So to that extent, I guess we have to understand that long-term basis, Russia is going to continue to be one of our important, friends, and we have to continue dealing with them, and we have to explain this to America, just like they keep on dealing with other countries, including China, that we cannot put all our eggs in one basket and then, get into a difficult situation down the line, because as Kissinger also once famously said, that to be an enemy of USA is very dangerous. To be a friend of USA is fatal. So I guess we have to keep that in mind and accordingly, work with them and negotiate with them, deal with them, discuss with them, carry on the negotiations and discuss, see how much impact this sort of tariff level will have, how to decrease the tariffs for sectors which are important to both India and USA. Thank you, Vineet.
Reactions coming in from the BJP on Trump's move. BJP MP Praveen Khandelwal has said that India will respond appropriately. He says that the tariffs will be studied first.
वरिष्ठ नेता सांसद प्रवीण खंडेलवाल जी साथ में। प्रवीण जी, 25% टैरिफ होती है अमेरिका ने भारत पर, 1 अगस्त से लागू होगा, कितना प्रभाव पड़ेगा भारत पर?
देखिए, ये इसका भी एक स्टडी करना जरूरी है। सबसे पहले ये देखना जो महत्वपूर्ण है कि भारत सरकार इसका संज्ञान लेगी और भारत सरकार का इस पर क्या व्यू बनता है। जो व्यू भारत सरकार का होगा वही व्यू हमारी ट्रेड और इंडस्ट्री का होगा। हम हर मामले में प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के साथ खड़े हैं।
आप खुद एक ट्रेडर हैं, ट्रेडर होने के नाते आपको क्या लगता है सर, क्योंकि अमेरिका से भारत का जो ट्रेड होता है उसमें आपको लगता है एक तरफा हो जाएगा? फिर
देखिए, एक बार इसकी समीक्षा हो जाने दीजिए। समीक्षा होने के बाद कुछ चीजें सामने निकल करके आएंगी और तब कुछ ठोस तरीके से कह पाना संभव होगा।
ये तो प्रवीण खंडेलवाल जिनका कहना कि पहले भारत सरकार एक बार पूरे इस फैसले को देख ले, समीक्षा कर ले, उसके बाद फिर सारे ट्रेडर्स, व्यापारी अपना रुख स्पष्ट करेंगे। संजय शर्मा।
All right, well, Congress has also attacked the government over the Trump tariffs. Jairam Ramesh has said that President Trump has slapped a tariff of 25% plus penalty on imports from India. All that tariff between him and Howdy Modi has meant little. Mr. Modi thought that if he kept quiet on the insults that the US President has hurled on India, the 30 claims of stopping Op Sindoor, the special lunch for the Pakistani army chief, whose inflammatory remarks provided the immediate backdrop to the brutal Pahalgam terror attacks, and US support for financial packages to Pakistan from the IMF and the World Bank, India would get special treatment at the hands of President Trump. Clearly, that has not happened. He should take inspiration from Indira Gandhi and stand up to the US President. All right. Professor Nalapat still with us on the broadcast. Professor Nalapat, both the parties also weighing in at this point in time. Who said what and who did what? And the fact of the matter is, as we speak, there is a joint space operation going on between ISRO and NASA as well. the Nisar. But do you think that these are just basically remarks that Donald Trump is perhaps used to? It's characteristic of him to make such remarks and then perhaps tone down. Do you think this is just a pivot or a setup to a negotiation which is about to happen, sir?
Look, in my personal view, these are pressure tactics, and I think Trump understands the reality in the Indo-Pacific. He understands what China is all about. From his cabinet choices, you can make out that here's a man who fully understands what China is all about. But so far as Truth Social is concerned, well, the reality of the situation is it's a bullying tactic, and even bullying is not a helpful thing, especially among close friends and partners. So this kind of bullying tactic is not going to work with India. It's not going to change minds in Delhi, and certainly not that of the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. So I want to say, Vineet, that Trump is basically doing his best to make sure the US is isolated in the world. Someone, I think in the Atlantic, said, America alone. I mean, it's not America first. It's different from America alone. No country can be alone. We all need partners. We all need allies. India needs them. The US needs them. Every country needs them. And so, in my view, Vineet, it's a very, very ill-considered move on the part of President Trump to even express such views on Truth Social. But I would agree that I think it's knowing Donald Trump and knowing the high caliber of the people he has collected around him in his cabinet, very high caliber indeed, and knowing that he appreciates the high caliber, that he would not have chosen them. The reality is, I think we have to await developments, and I think we have to see what comes out in the end. But I think it's a good thing to have an FTA, provided basic interests of both the US and India are not sacrificed. And certainly that of India should not be sacrificed on the altar of greater financial support for the US, because the reality of the situation is certain sectors are very important for India. They're important for the Indian people, important for livelihoods, and we cannot play with them, because here it's a question of playing with lives. In America, it's a question of playing with less or more prosperity. Here, it's a question of playing with more or less poverty. So I think the Indian stance is going to remain dignified. It's going to be non-abusive, certainly, but it's going to remain firm. And I'm quite certain that President Trump will come around to the same view that so many people around him will have, that India is too important a partner to be bullied around in this fashion. And secondly, Prime Minister Modi is not the man to be bullied. Neither is Trump, for that matter, and neither is Modi. So I think he will come to that realization, and we still have about a day or two before this, the kind of warning that he issued. So I still have expectation that he will come around to a point of view which is good for US security, good for Indian security, and good for security of democracies. I believe that will happen, Vineet, and I still hope that will happen. Thank you.
You're absolutely right, sir. Mr. Andrew Latham, Professor of International Relations, is joining us from Washington, D.C. at this point in time. Mr. Latham, appreciate you joining us. I hope you can hear me. All right. Well, amidst, dipping popularity and falling ratings, Donald Trump has imposed a 25% tariff on India. He's obviously vexed at the fact that India continues to do trade with Russia when it comes to procuring oil, energy, as well as defense equipment. What do you make of this erratic, a post that has been put out by Donald Trump? Do you think this is a preamble or a preview to something more positive, or is this the way that Donald Trump operates?
Well, it's definitely the way that he operates. I think we need to back up and look at the bigger picture. What does President Trump and his administration, how do they see the world and America's role, and how do they understand the Indo-Pacific and the alignment forces, the balance of power in that region? And it's clear that for both geopolitical reasons, but also for economic reasons, trade reasons, the United States would love to have India completely and totally on Team USA in this multipolar world of great power competition. If for no other reason, that's a huge market potentially for the United States, both in terms of investment and in terms of selling goods, but it's also a source of many, many important commodities as well, but also geopolitically as a kind of balancer of China alongside the US and the Quad, AUKUS, et cetera. But I think President Trump is vexed by the fact that he doesn't quite understand that with multipolarity and given India's history, multi-alignment is key to understanding Indian foreign and defense policy. Yes, India is sometimes on Team Russia. It buys Russian oil, it buys replacement parts for former Soviet, now Russian military equipment. It is a founding member of BRICS, which the United States doesn't really appreciate because the Trump administration sees it as trying to draw the blueprint for an alternative rules-based international order, which is not dominated by the United States. And of course, it has a variety of tariff and non-tariff barriers, and your previous guest was absolutely right. Some of those are absolutely non-negotiable for India because they go to core constituencies, and it is a question of poverty versus more poverty, not prosperity versus more prosperity. So when Donald Trump looks at this, his instincts kick in, and his instincts are captured by the book he didn't write, but The Art of the Deal. He lived that world, but he didn't write that book. He's looking now carrots and sticks, right? And right now he's in stick mode. 25% tariffs, making a lot of noises about India's alignment, partial multi-alignment, so sometimes with Russia, sometimes on the BRICS. But at the end of the day, I think that the Trump administration would love to see India foursquare in the American camp, more dependent on the US than Russia for military equipment, for example, a tighter trading relationship, and better alignment around containing, blunting China's aspirations in the Indo-Pacific and perhaps beyond. Is he clumsy? Yes. Is he successful? Sometimes, bordering on often. And I just, again, to back up just a tiny little bit, I might disagree with your previous guest in this respect. I don't think it's America alone. I don't think it's America first. I think that language is somewhat dated. It is America untied, if you like, that the United States wants free reign, doesn't want to be hemmed in or tied down by formal agreements unless they favor the United States, and is willing to turn its back on Europe, for example, and say to the Europeans, it's your problem, you have the means, you take care of it, referring to Putin, of course. We have bigger fish to fry, focused on the Indo-Pacific and on hemispheric security. So I don't see an America retreating. I see an America unbridled on the world stage, and that might be equally frightening. I'm not sure. Remains to be seen.
You're quite right, sir. You're quite right. I agree with you. Well, General Sudhakarji, defense expert, is also with us on the program. General Sudhakarji, I hope you can hear me, sir. General Sudhakarji, 25% tariffs imposed by Donald Trump for our proximity towards Russia, for depending on Russia. Mr. Latham, who spoke just a few seconds ago, is of the opinion that these are one of Donald Trump's moods. He has a carrot mood, he has a stick mood, and right now he's in the stick mood.
Vinit, good evening. Thank you. And excellent question you have raised. The response that I have to the question you have raised is yes. In matters of global governance, there is definitely central requirement of sanity and rationality. Whether it is economics or geopolitics, or you talk about geoeconomics, geostrategy, or anything for that matter. At the moment, I personally feel Donald Trump, though he is president of a superpower, he has lost sanity, and I think he has lost resilience as a dignified, honorable president of a superpower. My personal take and opinion is that it's not always with a stick that you, in armed forces, we are taught about a mutt and Jeff. Under the present circumstances, it's only the stick which is working. this may turn out to be counterproductive. Let me take the minds of the Americans back to Reagan era. Similar kind of momentum had built and there was pressure on the president to actually impose tariff all over the world. And there was a committee which had given a recommendation to the president, and the honorable president had actually accepted that any tariff imposed by America against any country is going to be counterproductive, and it will lead to hyperinflation, it will lead to unemployment, it will lead to the increased labor cost and production cost of any product that they intended to actually produce. So finally, it took a complete turn around the entire structure and came back to 0-1. So I only hope it doesn't happen that, and by the time he realizes what he's doing, I think he will be at the end of the tenure. Now that the commitment that he made during the election campaigning to stop the Russo-Ukraine war has not happened. To stop the Hamas and Israel, or the Iran and Israel, hasn't happened. Instead, we keep hearing that the Gaza Strip is going to be annexed by Israel. These are the new dimensions which are adding on. He is only adding fuel to the fire and actually expanding the geopolitical churn in the world order, which is neither good for America nor for stability and harmony of the global order. Therefore, I would say just give little time. Such issues need not be discussed in media. There is a thing called as quiet diplomacy, like the way we have managed to navigate with Canada. The quiet diplomacy has taken us to a very, very productive stage of negotiation, as also diplomacy with Canada. I'm sure, given the mindful of the fact that we have had a regressive phase of relationship with America till 2000. Remember, when we actually carried out the underground test of the nuclear device in 1998, and the sanction had been imposed against us. And after the sanctions, India took just about 4 years to produce the cryogenic engine. Maybe you never know, these kind of sanctions may prove to be, prudential and providential to India's growth story. Because what I personally feel, any kind of percentage of tariff imposed by any country without a negotiated stance which is good for either of them is going to be counterproductive, because no country in the world or on this planet can exist by itself. Nobody can actually grow in isolation. The interdependence is actually eternal. It cannot be violated, nor can it be disputed. Back to you, Vinit.
All right. Ambassador Goyal, former diplomat, also joins us on the program. Ambassador Goyal, tariffs are here. Donald Trump has said that, India is a friend. That was the preamble of his post. But nevertheless, they have indulged in trade with Russia. We've been trying to stop Russia from invading, killing innocent people in Ukraine. And that is the reason why India is not good. This seems to be more of an agitation towards Russia than any kind of, a resonance towards India and our relationship with the Americans. Your thoughts, sir?
Vinit, I think we need to be much more careful in terms of analyzing what Trump has done today. It does demonstrate one thing, really, that if Trump has issued an ultimatum or a kind of a timeline, then more likely than not, he's going to adhere to it unless he has got his way through. And he seems to be fairly determined in terms of his implementing the tariff kind of plan. I don't even know if it's a plan or what it is, but he has his own mind on this thing. He's fairly well determined to do it. All that we really need to see is what is our strategy, whether we are going to stand up to this kind of a pressure and wait it out, or we are going to basically capitulate and say that, all right, let us do it. Now, the point really here is that even though there was an announcement or there was an indication that an American delegation would be coming to India to negotiate the trade deal, one would have thought that this would have happened with cognizance of Trump, and therefore those kind of the warnings about the 1st August would be put off. Clearly not. Therefore, what we need to now see is how do we continue with the trade negotiations, and that is the ultimate thing. See, the point is, at this point, there are two things. And I'm actually now, at the moment, I'm groping in the dark simply because it has come as a surprise. I was really quite hopeful that the indications from Washington were that they probably would wait for the outcome of the delegation talks after the Americans have done it in India. Therefore, there are two things here. Number one, if we seem to make any concessions now, at a political level, it would be seen as a kind of surrendering to the American threats. Whether it is or it is not is a different matter. I'm talking about the policy perception. At the same time, the impact that it will make on our total trade with the USA. There is no doubt, first of all, that 25% tariff from 1st August onwards are going to make it hugely at a advantage vis-a-vis other countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, several other countries where concessions have been made to the level of 15% only. And 10% difference is a huge one. It's going to make a huge lot of difference. So where do we go from here? We can hope that we continue with our negotiations as we are doing, wait for the American delegation to come and see what is possible at that time, or announce concessions now. I think for us, the first option of waiting for the American delegation to come, engage in talks and see where we go from there is a better option than really any knee-jerk reaction from India, even if it means pressure and a bit and loss, and a bit of a loss really on trade, because frankly speaking, if you look at the trade basket, except for a few items where there is a kind of a comparison between the items from India, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Many other items, there are really they don't compete with each other. iPhones, electronics, those things, minerals, they don't really compete with Vietnam or Indonesia. Therefore, calculate carefully, and we have a fairly good, I must say, a very competent team headed by Minister in the Ministry of Commerce. Calculate very carefully and take a gamble. It's a gamble, but frankly, I do think that President Trump has no option but to turn back on this kind of action. Vinny.
All right. Pathikrit Pine, also with us on the broadcast. Mr. Akash Jindal, senior economist, joining us on the show as well. Pathikrit, if you look at the list which has been put out by the White House and the tariffs, corresponding tariffs that have been put up against these countries on their official website, India is marked at 26%, Pakistan at 29%. A lot of other countries which don't even call themselves as friends of the United States also in the vicinity of 25 to 30%. What does this say about our foreign policy towards the Americans?
First and foremost, I congratulate the Prime Minister of India and his team, because we have not, just for the sake of being in the good book of Trump, we have not accepted all the terms and conditions they're looking for or they're trying to impose. I mean, just for the sake of not having a 25% tariff, should we have opened our dairy, poultry, fisheries and agriculture market? Should we have allowed non-veg, food-fed cattle to give milk to us? So this is not the way you do negotiations, and I strongly reiterate that we should stick to our points, and I still believe India is a strong strategic partner of United States. But if you get into the brass tacks of it, India today is a $4.1 trillion economy. Our exports to United States, merchandise export, is around $80 billion. $80 billion as percentage of your GDP sums up to something like 2% of the GDP. Now, 2% of the GDP, if it gets impacted, it is a problem, but it is not something unmanageable On the contrary, it gives you an opportunity to become far more resilient. What we ideally should do now is to have much more economic reforms in our agriculture sector so that it becomes viable. Our agriculture sector is the most unproductive sector where commercial transactions are not viable. And therefore, I think this entire 25% tariff plus 10% because of our dealings with Russia, 35% in totality. If Trump is considering that as a fair deal, then that's his choice. But just because America has a problem with Russia doesn't mean that we are going to give up on our relationship with Russia. Because I don't think America gives up its relation with Pakistan just because we have a problem with Pakistan. I don't think Americans gave up their relationship with China just because we had a Doklam and a Galwan. So I think somewhere the Americans also realize that they need India and India also needs America. There is no denial of that. I think these are pressure tactics. Eventually, some kind of concessions will be worked out. I am very hopeful of a mini trade deal. Certain things will not be worked out. But look at what America has done to the trade deals, so-called successful trade deals in case of European Union and Japan. Japan has been compelled to invest $550 billion into the American market. European Union had to pledge investments of $1.5 trillion into the American market. Now, just for the sake of 15% tariff, just for the sake of getting some good brownie points from Trump, are we supposed to invest $200, $300, $400 billion in the American market just to keep him happy? I do not think that is feasible for us. So I think there is a symbiotic relationship. There are strong strategic partnership areas of convergence between India and United States. We do acknowledge and realize that. We do acknowledge the contribution of America in the Indian economy. But if the Americans do not accept it, and I think the Americans are great people, I'm only talking about Trump administration, if it doesn't realize it, well, I'm sure today or tomorrow they would understand. There were certain situations like this created for us in the 1998 phase also, when we did the nuclear test and the sanctions were imposed. Eventually, it helped us to become far more resilient, and the Americans understood our concerns and relationship became better. So I think it is a Y2K moment for us. It helps us to become far more resilient. We are not an anti-Western country. We are just a non-Western country.
I'm happy that you see the positive side of this, but I'm not sure if the rest of the panelists and all of us see that light at the end of this tunnel. That light at the end of this tunnel, Mr. Jindal, could also be an oncoming train when it comes to the relationship between these two nations. As far as I know, that there are murmurs of a government meeting which is going to happen this evening. The External Affairs Minister and Mr. Piyush Goyal are also going to be meeting up to discuss on how to respond to these reciprocal tariffs. But what do you make of this attitude, rather, not more so the announcement that has been shown by Donald Trump when it comes to these reciprocal tariffs?
I think, Vineet, your question is very, very interesting, very offbeat. Really, see, as far as this tariffs are concerned, firstly, I'll talk about tariffs. Firstly, I seriously believe these tariffs are unsustainable. These tariffs are unsustainable as far as American consumer is concerned. American economy is clearly going through a slowdown, and these would clearly increase inflation of the American consumer, which he wouldn't like at this point in time. Let me remind the viewers, after the start of Russia-Ukraine war, there have been 2 successive quarters where the American economy showed negative GDP growth. Post that, American economy went through a period when they had to suspend their debt ceiling. They had to borrow beyond what they were allowed to do. They have to suspend their debt ceiling. American economy has itself been a deficit economy for many years, and now last quarter also has been bad. So I think this would increase their inflation because US consumer is using only those things from India which are not available in US. So overnight, these things won't be available in US. So this would definitely negatively impact the US economy. Plus, I think this is more of a pressure tactic, arm twisting tactic, and they're just trying to arm twist India to sign that deal according to US wishes. But our government is a very talented government, very tactful government, and our current government, it knows how to protect the interest of Indians. So our government, I know, is very firm, very sure on protecting the interest of our dairy farmers, our agriculturists, and all other allied areas. So I don't think these pressure tactics are going to work. India has been friendly with US. Donald Trump has many times said that Narendra Modi Sahab has been a great friend, and I think the chemistry has also been very good. So I think these are non-sustainable. I think within a 2 or 3 days itself, there would be an announcement wherein these would be suspended or kept in abeyance. I think our government also would respond, but our government definitely is not going to respond the way China responded, because our government, they tactfully deal with such things. They know how to have good relations with US and other business partners, plus they know how to protect the interest of our Indians. We know our government has been diversifying beyond US and China as far as business is concerned, as well as global trade is concerned. We have we had a deal with UK, we had a deal with 4 European nations. So our government is already diversifying. Our Prime Minister visited 5 nations. We had MOUs with those nations also. So we are already diversifying our global trade. We are already
all right. Okay. All right. Let me also rope in Mr. Andrew Latham, Professor of International Relations, once again into this conversation. Mr. Latham, the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump is, looking at these tariffs in isolation, perhaps. He's looking at these conditions, and thinking that, this equation is as straight as 2 + 2. But India is a very different country when it comes to its internal protectionism philosophy and economy, and that is why certain barriers prevail. Do you think, is this a reality that Donald Trump is perhaps agnostic to?
Well, I think he's been emboldened by the fact that he won the tariff battle, the trade battle against Japan, and he got the Europeans to roll over as well. And so I think that's partly what's going on here. He thinks if it ain't broken, don't fix it. It's working, and it will work on India. I think that's where he's made a mistake, because India is not the European Union, and it's not Japan, and it's not Canada for that matter, although there are some similarities there in terms of protecting domestic agricultural sectors from international trade, both in Canada and India. And these are politically, within both countries, there are constituencies that want those sectors to be reformed and want there to be freer trade with respect to, in Canada, dairy and poultry, for example. But there are very, very powerful political constituencies which are opposed, and these are non-negotiable. And Trump can talk about 50 or 60 or 1,000,000% tariffs, and I don't think the Indian governments at any level are going to roll over, because it would be political suicide to do so. So I think Donald Trump, you said agnostic, I think he brings a simplified template to bear when he's thinking about the politics of very complex and complicated countries other than the United States, which he simply doesn't understand. He's not terribly well traveled, doesn't understand Japan, doesn't understand India, doesn't understand the European Union, doesn't understand Canada for that matter, and one might argue doesn't really even understand the United States. But he's getting his way to some extent. He's emboldened by that to a large extent, and it's not going to work because the Indian government can go so far. It can make certain concessions. It can negotiate a goodish deal, but it ain't going to be.
So just hold on to that thought. We also have Mr. Mohandas Pai, founder of Farron Capital, joining us on the phone line at this point in time. Mr. Pai, I hope you can hear me, sir.
Yes.
All right. Well, the tariff war is back again. Donald Trump has made a bold announcement that India is going to be paying a tariff of 25% plus a penalty for its relationship with Russia and doing trade with Russia. A lot of water had flown under the bridge, and we thought that this was behind us. But knowing Donald Trump, nothing is impossible, sir.
Well, I think nothing was behind us. Please remember, he made a big deal with Japan and the EU, where he said you must pay 15% to the US for the privilege of selling to the US, and in return, we will sell to you with no duty. He's very clear in his mind. He's very clear. He knows that he is the biggest economy in the world. Everybody wants to sell in the US. It's a big market. And he's saying you must pay me taxes for the privilege of selling to me, and you must allow me to sell in your market with no taxes. We all knew it's going to come because India has been negotiating, playing hardball, but Trump doesn't care. Trump doesn't care. You see, we must understand, you're dealing with a person who doesn't care. He only says my way or the highway. And it works for him. Everybody has caved in. The whole world, almost the whole world has caved in because everybody needs the US. US has a trade deficit of 1.3 trillion. It is the largest buyer of goods in the world. Everybody needs the market. So he's playing on that. So I think we have to just negotiate and make the best of whatever deal comes. Nobody has the leverage with him, right? Who has the leverage? Nobody has the leverage.
You're quite right. Nobody does have the leverage. Mr. Pai, appreciate you talking to us and speaking to us.
Thanks.
All right. Let me go back to Ambassador Goel here as well. Ambassador Goel, what next is the big question. Should India be using this as an opportunity, or should India be going back to the drawing board and figuring out a way to tell Donald Trump that this is what we can do for you and this is what we can't. Obviously, giving in is not an option for India at this point in time, like Pathikrit also enunciated.
And so did I, Vinit, if you remember.
Of course, sir. Of course.
What I said, I will maintain that for the time being. We have the process going on. We have the American delegation coming to India for the next round of talks on the trade matters. We should wait for that to happen, and we should basically find out more about what is happening behind the scenes, if they know, in terms of the trade tariffs. I'm quite certain that they also will have different inputs to give, really. And in the meantime, I think we have to play the wait and see game. Let us not really capitulate immediately. There are both sides of the game here, but we must wait. We must wait. Trump, I think, and I will not be surprised if suddenly after 1 week, Trump says, all right, 1 week of tariff is enough. Let us change it again. He's very, very volatile. So let us have a long-term process, long-term strategy on this. And our team in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry is quite capable of doing that. We must wait. We must wait for the talks to continue. Vinit.
All right, Pathikrit, do you think this is perhaps also, basically, the bottom line behind this tariff, that Donald Trump, knowing what he does, is going to change his mind nevertheless?
Well, Vinit, it is absolutely right. When it comes to President Trump, there is nothing called the last word. So something can happen again next week. But I think, it's pretty clear that there are political eventualities involved. So, negotiations will continue. And I think the Indians were ready that some kind of such rash statements will be made. They will continue with their negotiations. We have a very strong negotiating team. And I think a mini trade deal is pretty much possible. What is not possible is to completely open up the market. What is not possible is to completely delink India from Russia. I mean, you look at it. If we have to take a fighter jet, the Americans sell it with a lot of conditions and strings attached. That is the problem for us. When it comes to our top-notch technologies, and there are areas, I reiterate, there are major areas of convergence between India and United States. There are programs of strategic collaborations and defense research which is going on. But I think, this pressure tactics beyond a point may not work, because we have faced these things in the past when it comes to the 1998 sanctions or many other times. And I think India has always emerged as a far more resilient country. We do not have any grudge. We are not an anti-Western country like anyone else. We are just a non-Western organization, or a non-Western country rather. So I think, you might see suddenly a U-turn, and some kind of a mini trade deal will be accepted by both sides for the time being. What happens beyond that, well, we don't know. But one thing is for sure, when it comes to the internal protection for certain markets, whether it's dairy or the poultry or the fisheries and a certain significant section of the agriculture market, I think India is very, very, apprehensive about opening it up. Politics will not allow it, and otherwise as well, we should not open up that market. We are not expecting the Americans to open up the entire market for us. So I think they must understand certain aspects. And in the past, there is a legacy of America understanding our concerns when we had an issue with them during the nuclear test, and they did eventually understand. And I'm sure this time, even then 2018 CAATSA sanctions were going on, they do understand the reason why S-400 was required, and there were certain arrangements done. But my last point, if you look at it, America has put sanctions on Iran. There is a mayhem going on in the Middle East. They have put sanctions on Venezuela. If a country of 1.5 billion people have to take oil from somewhere, where will we take it from apart from Russia? We are okay to take a little more from United States to reduce the trade deficit. But to say that you have to completely disown Russia, I think the Americans never disowned Pakistan, in spite of all the problems we have with Pakistan.
Okay.
So we should not.
Okay. All right. Mr. Raymond Vikri, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, is also joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Vikri, Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we're in India very concerned that Donald Trump has, picked up the cell phone and picked up his Apple phone and put a post out on Truth Social saying that there's going to be a 25% tariff on India. And the reasons are that we buy energy as well as defense equipment from Russia. Donald Trump is trying to deter Russia from invading and killing innocent people further in Ukraine. But that does not really mean that the anger needs to come out on India. We have considered the Americans as a friend. Donald Trump also called us a friend at the beginning of that post, but this is not how friends treat each other. India is a very peculiar country when it comes to its farmers, when it comes to its own economy. Do you think that Donald Trump has more or less failed to understand that?
Well, thanks very much for having me. It seems to me that Donald Trump does not understand India. He does not understand the importance of a relationship and building a relationship over a period of time. What he understands is the real estate developer's mentality of having a transaction, and in the transaction there are winners and losers. And he is determined to be able to paint himself as a winner, to aggrandize his own position, regardless of what else happens. That having been said, the U.S.-India relationship, both economically and strategically, and I would point out that those things go together. They're not separate worlds. The importance of this relationship between two great democracies is fundamental to solving problems throughout the world, whether it be Chinese aggression, climate change, health considerations. So a way must be found out. I think the nub of the problem, however, is not going to really be trade. It seems to me that President Trump has now finally gotten the message that Putin is not his friend, that he wasn't able to resolve the Ukraine situation on day one. And I do think that India needs to reconsider its position as a leader of the democratic world, as opposed to being able simply to run with the hare and chase with the hounds in regard to Russia, China, and other authoritarian nations. That doesn't mean you need to cut off everything. But it does mean that values have to play a role, and it has been the case in the past that India has viewed itself as singular and not really needing to cooperate based upon democratic values. The standing apart from the Ukraine invasion is exhibit number one. So this is a very difficult situation, and Trump has turned on a dime in regard to Russia and Ukraine. India will not need to do so, but India needs to take a leadership position. The basic problem with this transactional approach is to destroy the WTO, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, the multilateral approach, which has served the world so well since World War II. And the answer, it seems to me, is not for India to say, yes, we'll go it alone and we'll deal with whomever we please on whatever basis we please, but to realize what its own interests are and act on those interests, both economically and strategically.
Fair enough. Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst, also joins us on the program. Tehseen, appreciate you being here. Well, Donald Trump has made it loud and clear that we will have to pay 25% tariffs as well as a penalty for being close to Russia. Considering the fact that, this dosti that we have seen blossom over the last few years was going to give us some sort of a discount, that bubble has burst, hasn't it?
Vinny, thank you so much for having me on the show. I hope I'm audible and clear.
Loud and
The
clear.
audio is perfect. Vinny, President Trump is a maverick. One cannot trust him. One cannot do business with a maverick. The problem with President Trump running diplomacy or Trump-macy, as I call it, is that there is no policy that is complex, that is based on science. It is simplistic, juvenile, and even the numbers and data that his own economists put out, that is the US economists, say that it is flawed. Let me take the example of India, because I'm more concerned about India, the trade deficit that President Trump talks about. He gives it a 53% weightage in favor of India. That's not true. Actually, a trade deficit is only 9%. The imbalance of trade is only 9%. The method is complex. Number two, by hurting India, he's hurting a strategic ally, an ally that is the cornerstone of the US foreign policy, particularly with regards to the Indo-Pacific area where the US has strategic interests, particularly with regards to China. And he's hurting a dependable democratic ally with whom he shares, or US shares, common values and common grounds. And I think that is not good, both for the United States of America and India. This is going to hit India's economy. I see personally, from the basic calculations I did with these tariffs and penalties, about 0.5 basis point on our economy, on our GDP. But it's also going to hurt the US, because what India exports to the US is material that the US does not manufacture, cannot manufacture immediately in the short term in any case. So that is anyways going to hurt the US and the US consumers. So President Trump is not just hurting India, his friends in India who value the relationship with the United States of America. He's hurting his own electorate and his own people out there. And this is against the spirit of a free world, and what is against the spirit of the WTO agreements, of which both India and the US are a part.
All right.